Hi, it's Corene, and today I'm here with a tutorial on how to make a chipboard box. I showed one a few weeks ago in a video, a box that I made with a mini album, a baby mini album. I'll show you a photo here. So that was a box that I made, and I received tons of requests asking me to show a video on how I made that box. So I'm here to share that with you today. I am not making the same size as that box. That one was 8.5 inches square. This one's going to be much smaller simply because I don't have enough chipboard and I haven't received my order of chipboard. So instead of waiting for that order to come in, I thought I would just get the tutorial up for those of you who need it and wanted it with a smaller box. And once you get the idea of how to make a box, you can make it whatever size you choose to. So I'm just going to quickly go over some of the products that you'll need today to make the box. First of all, you'll need chipboard, and I'm using some graphics chipboard. I'll put a link in the description box. I usually get it from either Amazon or Walmart. It's a medium weight chipboard, is my favorite chipboard to use. And the box that I'm making today is going to be 4x4. So you're going to need the bottom of the box, which is 4x4. You're going to need the lid for the box, which you need to make it a little bit larger. I make mine 1/4 inch larger, so it's 4 1/4 inch square. You're going to need the sides that go down the side of your lid on your box. You're going to need 4 pieces of those. Those will be 4 1/4 by 1. That's completely up to you on how far you want it to go down the box. I usually use 1 inch. So you'll need 4 of those. Then you're going to need the sides of your boxes. Now the sides of your boxes need to be the same size as the bottom of your box, which is 4 inches. The height of your box is completely up to you. I'm going with 3.5 because I didn't want it too tall. So you're going to need 4 of those. Again, mine are 3.5 by 4 inches. Then you're going to want to choose some paper that matches the paper collection that you're going to be using. I'm going to be using this Authentique, and when I looked through the papers, I loved how it looked with the black. So I'm choosing to use black paper as my base paper to cover my box. Here is the paper that I use. Let me try and get it without the glare. It's called Ampad, and it's from Walmart. It's a 65-pound cardstock. You can find it in the section where they sell copy paper, and this is absolutely my go-to black cardstock. If I need 12 by 12, I usually buy Basil or Nina cardstock, but this is my favorite 8.5 by 11 to use. Like I said, it's 65-pound and it's a smooth cardstock, so I find that it does not crack on me when using it. You'll also need like a ruler, some double-sided tape. I like using wet adhesive, scissors, my paper piercer, your paper trimmer, and then again some paper collection that you want to use. If you're making a larger box, you'll need larger paper, of course. I'm making a smaller box, so a 6x6 pad is perfect. And that's about it. The first thing I like to do is on the edges of my sides, let me get a scrap piece of paper here. I like to use some distress paint ink. If you don't have one of these Dauber bottles, you can just use a paintbrush with acrylic paint. This is completely up to you if you like to do that. I'll explain more why I like to do it, but these are the sides of my boxes. So I'm getting just the edges because part of them will be seen. So that's why I am matching it to whatever paper I'm wrapping it with. In this case, it's black. If I was using white, I would be painting this with white. So I'm quickly going to do that to all the sides of my pieces. Okay, so the first thing I like to do is cover both my lid and the bottom of my box and then work on the rest of it from there. So the bottom of my box is 4x4. I want to make my paper that I'm using 1 inch larger. So I'm going to cut this to 5x5. And I'm going to cut, while I have my trimmer out, the stuff I need for the lid of my box. This is 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. So I'm going to cut this to 5 1/4 inch square. Again, just making it 1 inch larger than what the lid of your box is. And now we're going to glue this down. I'm using my quick dry adhesive for this. Whatever glue you like to use will work. The only thing I don't know if I would recommend is hot glue, because you will see it on the other side of the paper. It dries so quickly and you'll see bumps in it. So I don't like to use hot glue. Although I love hot glue, I don't use it on this. So I'm just going to use my brayer. Make sure that's really pressed down. Okay, and I'll set that aside while I'm doing the same thing to the bottom of my box. A lot of this, you'll notice, is very similar to making the cover of a mini album. So next thing I like to do is just go ahead and add my adhesive on, and I'm going to go around the edges of my chipboard using a strong double-sided adhesive. The next thing you want to do is use either a bone folder or stylus. I like to use my stylus, and go around the edges of your chipboard. This is going to help your paper fold over. Okay, and now go around and start folding your paper, just to let the paper know which way you want it to bend. Okay, and now we're going to miter the corners just like we would if we were doing a mini album. You can use your score marks as a guide to cut the corner out. This is going to eliminate bulk when you fold it over, but you don't want to cut all the way to your chipboard. You want to leave about a 1/8 inch space where you're cutting it off. And this may not always turn out perfect, and that is the reason I paint the edges. Like I said, it's not necessary to paint the edges. I like to do it just as a form of insurance, because if I don't cut this correctly, then instead of the naked chipboard showing, you won't see it because it's black, which matches the paper that you're wrapping it with. Because it's very frustrating if you don't cut it exactly perfect to see a little bit of that chipboard hanging out. I hate the look of that. So that's why, just as preventative, I paint it to make sure that it doesn't show. So now you want to fold it over. I like to do opposite ends first. I'll just go ahead and remove all my tape backing now on both the lid and the bottom. Now, just the same as if you're doing a mini album, if you have a little piece that sticks out right here on the edge, you want to fold that in, and that'll give you a nice clean edge. So right there, I have a little bit sticking up. I know it's going to be very hard to see. I'm going to, so here's before, and let me just kind of tuck it, and you want to be careful not to rip the paper. You just kind of want to tuck it in. So I used my bone folder and I just lightly tucked that in. And I'm going to do that to all the sides. This will give me a nice edge, not a bulky edge where it's sticking out. Okay, and once that's done, just go ahead and fold this over. Okay, and as you can see right here and here, I did not cut it correctly. Therefore, normally you would see chipboard, but you don't. You see black there and it stands in, or it doesn't stand out the way chipboard would. I'll be putting a piece of paper on top of this anyway, so you won't see that, but that's why I like to do that, because I don't always get those correctly cut in the corners. And how you can avoid that is by not cutting too close. I obviously cut a little too close on that, but no big deal. Like I said, you will be covering that up anyways with another piece of paper. Okay, so I'm tucking those edges in. And you want to tuck them in towards the part that you have not folded yet. So when you fold it, it hides them. Hope that makes sense how I'm saying it. So now do the other two edges. And just go over it with your bone folder. Okay, so now the lid and the bottom of the box I'm going to set aside for now. Next thing I want to work on are my four sides. Using the same black paper, I want to cut down a couple pieces of paper. The height of my sides are going to be 3.5. I'm going to make these probably a little bit larger, so I'm going to cut them, I'm going to do 2 inches. So I'm going to do 5 inches, and I'm not going to worry about the length right now. I'm going to leave it at the 11-inch length. And again, I'm going to cut these 2 inches taller than my sides. So these are going to be 5.5 by 11. If you're following the same box that I am. If you're not, you want to just cut them 2 inches larger than what your lid is. Or excuse me, what your sides are. Okay, and 2 pieces of paper should be enough. I need to adhere these 2 pieces of paper, so I'm going to use a 1/2 inch double-sided tape. I'm going to add that along the edge of one of my pieces. And you may need several pieces of these. For my 8.5 inch box that I did, I needed 4 pieces of paper. This one I'm going to see if 2 pieces will work. So now I'm just going to kind of lay out my, 4 pieces will definitely work, as you can see here. You just want to make sure that you have space on the top and bottom and each side. So what I like to do, this is completely up to you. I know that I have an extra inch total. So I like to, or excuse me, I have 2 extra inches. So I like to mark up 1 inch as a guide to follow where I'm going to lay my chipboard. You can 100% eyeball this. This is up to you. This is just something that really helps me. So I'm finding a 1 inch and marking it. And I'm going to do that down the whole length of my paper. Okay, and again, I'm not going to worry about the end because we will trim that as we need to. Taking my 4 pieces, I did also mark in 1 inch, and that'll be my guide to follow on that. So I'm going to adhere them down just like I did using my Scotch Quick Dry. Same way I did with my lid and the bottom of my box. This does not need to be perfect, but it does help if it is perfect because you don't want it slightly going up. You want it to go straight across so you can fold it over. So that's why having a pencil guide really does help me. So now you want to leave a 2 between each piece that you lay down. I learned that a long time ago from Laura Dennison, that you want to leave enough space so when it folds over, your chipboard is not hitting each other. And what I did instead, I know she eyeballs it, what I did is I made a template, and how I made it is I just used 2 scrap pieces of the chipboard, glued them together. You may have seen me do this with my mini albums. It gives me a guide to make sure that I'm leaving enough room in there. That way when you fold it, the chipboard's not running into each other. If it does run into each other, then your paper will crack and it will not fold correctly. So this is really important to not do that. You can eyeball it. For me, it's easier to just use some scrap pieces, and that way I know I'm getting it correctly. And again, I'll use my guide, my pencil guide. Place that down. And I'll do the exact same thing with my other 2 pieces. And just as I did on the other side, I'm going to leave 1 inches here, and I can cut down the rest of my paper and get rid of that. So the next thing you want to do is, just as you did on the first one, you want to go around all the chipboard and give it a nice score, so when you fold your paper, it'll have a little bit nicer fold. And start folding that paper against the edge of your chipboard. Okay, and we want to go ahead and miter the edges again. Now, you also want to do that everywhere in between where your sides meet. You want to cut out a small triangle, and you want to go up to the score line but not over the score line. This will alleviate some of the bulk when you fold it. So that's about the size that you want to take out. You can do a little bit less than that even. Again, up to that score line, not going over the score line. And you want to do that on both sides. So here's what it should look like. So now I only want to add my tape to one of the edges and one of the sides. You'll see why here in just a moment. And now I'll just go ahead and remove all that tape backing. Fold the one edge in. And I want to do the same thing I did, tuck that corner in so it gives me a nice corner. I'll do that to both this side and the other side where the tape is. And now being that I have quite a bit of flap here, I'm going to add a little bit of wet glue to the edge just so I know it's adhered down well. And if you have a little bit of tape sticking out, just roll it off. Usually if you're using a double-sided tape, you can just kind of pull it off there. Some of the time that'll be covered up with another piece of paper, but this one's a little too far over, so I'm just going to kind of peel it off. Now, you don't want to do anything with this flap yet. What you want to do is lightly fold your edges just to show the paper which way you want it to go. You don't want to be too rough with it or you could crack it. And now because we left that gap, your chipboard is not interfering with each other when it folds. It folds beautifully. So the edges of this will attach to the bottom of our box. So we don't want to do those just yet. Next thing we want to do is cover this with our paper. So I will choose my paper and cut that out. Okay, so I'm going to alternate the patterns on the inside, and I made these pretty close to the heights. I left a little bit of a black border, but on the sides here, which may be hard to tell, I left more of a border, and that is the purpose of me painting the edges of the chipboard. I have made a box before where I covered the chipboard from cover to cover with paper, and it did interfere with each other when the box was folded. It started you know, bending a little. So in order to avoid that, I just simply, like I said, I match the chipboard to whatever I'm using, the paper. If you're using a craft colored paper, then you don't need to paint it, but if you're using black or white, you want to just paint the edges. That way you can't even tell. It looks like it's paper. So I'm going to adhere these down. And you want to go where the flap is open, you want to adhere your paper all the way to the edge, leaving yourself a small border on the other side where the paper is folded up. Is to make sure that none of the chipboard up there is showing. Okay, so now as you can see, this folds beautifully. and we want to go ahead and adhere it, and this will be the base of our box. You want to adhere the black to the outside because we will be putting a piece of pattern paper over the top of that. So the next thing I want to do is put paper to cover this on the bottom of my box. You can either do the same matching paper, black, or a pattern paper, which I will probably do a pattern paper that I think looks nice with these. I want to cut that to 4 by 4, maybe shave a little bit off of it, just a tiny bit. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so that's a perfect fit and it hides any of those corners. Now the next thing I want to do is fold in my box and set my bottom piece down in here and kind of fold it around here. There's several ways you can do this. This is how I like to do it. So I'm just going to kind of make sure it's set in there, press it down, and now I'm going to use some wet adhesive and glue the side down first. So let me just add my wet adhesive. I want to make sure I get full coverage here because I want to make sure this is adhered down nicely. I'm not going too close to the edge where my pattern paper is though. So again, let me just kind of, I'm going to make sure these two pieces here are on top. This is not necessary, it's how I like to do it. So the two pieces across from each other are going to be on the bottom, and the two side pieces are going to be on top, which you'll see here in a minute what I mean on the bottom when it's folded. So now again, I'm just going to kind of place that in there, make sure it's pressed down, hold it next to each other, and glue this side down. Okay, now you still want to be careful because the bottom of your box is not adhered down yet. So I'm going to, once I know that this is fairly dry, I'm going to flip this over and add a little bit of glue. And this is what I was talking about. I like the two sides to match. This is not necessary, we will be covering it up with paper, but I like these two ends folded in first and then these two ends. Which had I could have put double-sided tape and just removed the tape right now and glued them down. That would have probably been easier, but no big deal. I will add wet adhesive. So I'm going to do the two ends first. Opposite ends first, I should say. And I'm going to set those down, turn it back over, make sure that my bottom is pressed into there. Okay, and now I will finish it off by doing the other two. I want to make sure I get quite a bit of glue on all the edges to make sure it adheres down very well. Okay, and same thing, I'm going to turn it over, press this down, make sure it's sitting flush. Perfect. So now I think for the bottom I will just add a piece of black paper. Okay, so here's our box. I wanted to share with you another option of how you can glue the bottom to the bottom piece to your box. Here is my box, and as you can see, I have adhered this side here. Let me see if the light will pick that up. There, you can kind of see it there. So that flap there I've already glued down, and what you saw in the other portion is I already had the bottom of the box in there before I glued this flap down. There we go. Another option is take the bottom of your box and set it in here, and this actually might be my more favorite option, so that's why I went ahead and wanted to show you it on another box that I'm making. So you just kind of want to set it in there, make sure you're happy where it's at. And I like to look inside, make sure it looks good from the inside. That looks perfect. And now you just want to use some wet glue and adhere it down this way. Like I said, this may be my more favorite option of how to do it. Just depends on the mood I'm in. Sometimes I do it the other way. So again, I like to do the two opposite flaps. And on the other video, you saw that on the lid of the box, I used the double-sided tape. And then on the bottom of the box, I used the wet glue. I've decided I like using the wet glue better. So I thought I would just mention that for anybody who's making a box for the first time. I mean, definitely try it to see what you like best, but I'm just telling you from trial and error what I like best, and I'm really happy with the wet glue. So now again, we will be placing either a decorative pattern paper or another black piece of paper to cover up all of these lines. So that's just a second option of how you want to glue it together. So again, add the corners, the sides of your box, add the tab to that, and then just place it in from the top side and glue these flaps down. Okay, so I hope you find one of the ways helpful, and just cover that piece up to hide all of that. So here are the sides of our box, and these are 4 1/4 by 1. So I want a piece of paper that is cut to, let's see, I'm going to do by 2. Again, I'm not going to worry about the length of the paper just yet. So I'm cutting, this is an 11-inch piece. I'm cutting to 2 inches tall. And I'll need another one. I'll adhere these just the same way I did with the sides of the box. And again, I'm going to give myself a guideline here, so I'm just going to mark up a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to glue them down the exact same way I did. So as I'm gluing it on, this one's definitely a little bit smaller, so either these Either these were cut a little bit too big or that was cut too small. Yeah, these are perfectly 1 inch. Okay, this is just a hair smaller than 1 inch. So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to use other pieces that I have, and let's see if I can just kind of rip this up. Yeah, I'll just rip that up and throw that away, and then I'm not going to worry about that little piece right there because I'll be folding that over. So if I need to add another piece of paper, I will, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'll just continue to add what I have here. Yeah, I'm going to have to add one more piece of paper. So now I'm just going to cut a little bit off this. I'll just eyeball it. Same width on this side. And now we're going to do the exact same thing we did and run our score tool around to help fold it. Okay, so here are the flaps that will be adhering to the lid of our box. I think this time I'm going to add adhesive on them. That way I don't have to worry about the wet glue, which worked out just fine. So if you prefer to use wet glue, that's fine too. And we also need to cover the inside, which I will just do with black paper. So I'm going to adhere my black paper. I'll do 4 3/16. So right below, the first line below the 4 1/4, and I will do the line right before the 1 inch, so almost 1 inch. So I need 4 of those. And again, this you will not see. This is why I ink the edges with the black, because I'm purposely leaving a gap so when it folds you don't have to worry about it. For these I'm going to use my ATG to adhere them down. Okay, so the lid of the box we want to cover as well. This I will be using decorative paper on. So now I'm going to do the top the exact same way I did the bottom. I'm going to add my adhesive on my tab. There's several ways you can do this, whatever is going to be most comfortable for you. I like to do it this way best. Okay, once I'm certain that that's on there fairly well, I want to just remove the back of the tape. Okay, and there's the lid to our box. It fits perfectly. It has enough room to slide on there very easily. So now I need to cover up all these edges. So here is our cute little box. I'm going to continue adding paper just by measuring it and gluing it on the sides, and I'll be right back. So here's my finished box, and I am going to decorate another one that I made that I need for somebody to give. So I made this box the exact same way that I did the box that I just showed you. However, it's a little bit larger. So I'm going to be needing this for something, so I'm going to decorate this on camera. So I hope you stay tuned and enjoy. All the links to the Wild Orchid Craft products used will be down in the description box. And if you have any questions, please leave me a comment.